Hello, my name is Creosticks, and I'm here to try to give out my ideas on why Shadow of the Tomb Raider is, at least to me, so disappointing. And my intention is to not only point out the reasons why I was disappointed, but also to suggest how these issues could be fixed or improved upon. Also, I'm not doing this to just laugh at the game's failures or like that, but because I hope that just maybe this will help someone to not make these mistakes with their game all over again. So, indeed, calling Shadow of the Tomb Raider a bad game would be untrue, but it has a baffling amount of areas where I feel it just falls on its face. Let's start off with my pet peeve, the fact that the game feels the need to add Metroidvania barriers just for their own sake, for the sake of the video game to be video gamey, regardless of whether or not they make any sense in the game world's own context. And they very often make infuriatingly little sense. Like this wall here early on. This wall needs a shotgun even though you are able to destroy other kinds of frankly heavier looking barriers, and that flimsy sheet metal should be a pretty simple thing for Lara to just bend off. At a push you could probably just crawl under it too, but no, the badass Tomb Raider must go get the one specific shotgun from way forth in the main story to explore beyond this wall. As a fun bonus, some super flimsy wooden obstacles also can have this requirement to round out how just nonsensical this really is. As a comparison here, she is perfectly able to break pretty heavy looking obstacles normally anyway, and also mine gold even underwater if necessary. Imagine her going home thinking, man, I was so close to the treasure, but this thin, pathetic sheet metal obstacle was in front of me. I could have easily just bent it open with my pickaxe or crawled under it, but I just felt like I had to have a shotgun to go through it. Oh well. And this issue permeates the entire trilogy. It's not just this game. It's a very common complaint, and it's only got worse than before in this game. The shotgun is also not the only example of this. Another one has to do with knives. This issue surfaced with an audible WTF in the second game, where early you encounter ropes everywhere, to which you need the combat knife, quote-unquote, to cut rope. Even though in the story, Lara has already skinned deer with an arrow and skinned a bear with an axe. Something you had to do to progress in the story. She's also equipped with climbing axes and other climbing gear, but supposedly left to the journey without a knife. And also none of the 30 people she's killed by this point were then carrying a knife for her to pick up. To get this knife, you needed to progress something like 2/3 or more in the game's story to finally get it. The seemingly only knife in the entire second game. And strangely, the same issue comes up here. It almost feels like this game series stubbornly holds on to all of its flaws, defiantly refusing to improve on the problems the series has. From the very beginning, you encounter these walls that are barely held together by rope, that require the quote-unquote reinforced knife. And the first time this happens, before Lara has any kind of plane crash or the like, to make her lose even some of her equipment. So she just went into a tomb all normal like without a knife that could cut rope. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. And if you don't believe me that the walls are barely held together, just check it out what finally getting past these kinds of walls look like. Even the graphics feel like these walls shouldn't be here, as she cuts one small rope and the whole thing just comes tumbling down. Man, if only we were some sort of badass Tomb Raider who could just, not have to deal with such bafflingly bad obstacles. And again, we've killed countless people by this point, and no one has a knife we could just take. Even the knife we use in the game is a makeshift knife built out of a propeller blade that Lara changes only when she finds this reinforced knife upgrade. Which leads me to believe that in this world, knives are more rare than nukes. The entire world seems to have a combined amount of something like 4 knives, including the one we built out of a propeller. And then all of humanity just has to share those 4 knives amongst each other when they want to make a sandwich. The solution to these obstacle problems is simple. Just delete them. They don't even guard anything plot important or overpowered, so you could immediately improve the game by just hitting delete on all of these walls and make them open doorways. Just, go through them and they're just not there. Another somewhat small but weird thing is how the found relics are handled. In this game, they more often than not are really just not historically interesting, focusing on things like a wooden carving of a modern assault rifle, but even when the item itself is actually an archaeological find of some sort, the hidden information in them is weird, in that they just sometimes didn't put that information in the game. For example, I found this one color about which she just says,
"I wonder how it ended up here,"
instead of telling you anything. Often the new information depicts smells instead of anything archaeologically interesting. On top of this turn for bad relics, they mess up the sensitivity of you rotating the item, making it super fast and very difficult to settle on a point you want, an issue that was not in either of the previous games. Also, the relics tended to be more interesting before, even if they weren't perfect then either. Another small but sometimes amusing thing is how all relics improve your understanding of languages and dialects, which may sound reasonable but may lead to moments where a bowl of meat and potatoes teaches you dialects of a foreign language. So, that's... The meat was so good and the potato was so tasty that you learn to speak in tongues, so that's good then. My solution to that would be to just delete the relics that are not old archaeological finds, and also just remove the mechanic of finding new information in them if there is no interesting information to be put in there. You would still have a pretty solid amount of collectibles left that actually seem interesting. My next issue lies with the platforming mechanics and the world built around them. This often creates situations where things look like platforms but are not that, and result in rather fragile looking deaths, which doesn't quite fit for Lara since she can walk away from, example, plane crashes with no problems. Another thing that even the game seems to have problems handling is its own platforming mechanics, and often the game breaks itself with them, resulting in Lara balancing herself on invisible platforms. Other times the game's camera can break as a result of what I believe is a jump the game wasn't ready for. Technical issues are always a thing in games, but they seem to happen pretty often here as a result of platforming, which is a bit of an issue with a game that is an action platformer. There was one very strange glitch that I could repeat reliably by jumping in a direction I thought was the correct one, after which whenever I was not attached to anything like a grabbing platform or balancing platform or such, the game would only accept one direction of walking, running or jumping. Here I'm trying to walk away from the edge, but the game says, no, your direction is toward the ledge and nowhere else. So my only option is to jump in the direction the game forces me into, landing me onto a balancing platform that works normally, but when I get off it, the game automatically makes me run back onto the balancing platform because that is the one direction the glitch says Lara must go into forever. And this issue resolves itself only when I jump off the platform to my death. One more thing about traversing the world is that the obstacles here as well can be rather hilarious. On one occasion, Lara even mentions that she needs to find a way outside, even though she could easily just go through the hole she's looking at. On A different occasion, I could see a relic underwater, but it was blocked by a wooden fence. It reaches about a meter above the water and is practically just a ladder to climb, or so you'd think. We are a badass Tomb Raider, but climbing a fence that couldn't be more a ladder even if it tried to be one. No, that is an insurmountable obstacle and we need to go around to hell and back to reach the relic. Imagine her again going home, or like, man, that treasure was right there, if only I could just climb a pathetic wooden fence. Bummer. It's hard to offer a better solution to the platforming issues other than just to try to keep an eye out open for them to make sense, and more time in the oven to iron out the technical issues in them, and that part is up to the publisher and not the developer really. But now we've reached the story, and oh boy, where do I start with this? If I start nitpicking every single story beat about its issues, we'll be here all day. So I'll try to focus on the broad strokes and a couple of weird details that really stood out to me. So here goes. The story is that Dominguez, this dude, left the hidden city of Paititi, this place, as a child to the outside world. He became a doctor of archaeology, and you remember that evil ancient organization of these games called Trinity? Well, he became their leader, as you apparently do when you leave your primitive village of whatever, sure, and proceeded to focus on finding this dagger and to put it in this silver box, and to find that silver box as well. Doing so would apparently give him the powers of a god and the ability to reshape the entire world. Whatever that means. If you simply remove the dagger from its pedestal in the ancient ruin it's hidden in, the world ends in like a week or two or such, bringing forth first a tsunami, then a storm, an earthquake, and a volcanic eruption, and finally the sun dies and the world ends. Unless you put the dagger in the silver box to apparently do whatever you want, either to save the world or do whatever you want with the world. Dominguez's plan is, as far as I could gather from his ramblings, to use the god power to kill everyone in the world except for the hidden city of Paititi to, quote, keep Paititi safe from the outside world. And that's it. Lara happens to take the dagger from the temple, starting the apocalypse, giving some expediency to the proceedings here of finding this silver box. And she also loses that dagger to Dominguez immediately. Also, if you're wondering, that wasn't there a Trinity High Council or something that was also, a thing that needs to be dealt with? Well, the game's solution to this is that at the very end of the game, they have them come visit the end climax area off-screen in a helicopter, and then in the course of about 1 minute, they have them attacked off-screen and destroyed off-screen in a riveting radio drama as you're climbing away doing your own thing. The story is so unusual that I can only offer the advice of nuking the whole thing and just starting over. My first main issue with the story is that there's no such suspension of disbelief that can pull me into the idea that a child who wanders off from a primitive hidden city becomes not only the doctor of archaeology, but also, more importantly, the leader of the ancient, massive, secret, supervillain organization full of murderous mercenaries. My second issue is that the story is again about a magical whatever that does magic because magic and magic. This rebooted Tomb Raider series went for a realistic survival angle, but always immediately undermines all of that by adding these magical plot MacGuffins as their main focus. So what's the point of the realistic gritty focus then? The magic focus also hurts the entire concept of historical archaeological adventuring, because why is archaeology interesting? Because it makes us find cool old things, and we learn cool real facts about those cool old things. But to make that interesting, those archaeological items need to be from a depiction of the real world. Otherwise, the archaeology is about finding old things about an imaginary world that we have no personal attachment to. And make no mistake, the Tomb Raider world is not a depiction of the real world you and me live in. This is some sort of parallel universe where magic is real, thin sheet metal is removed with shotguns, and all of humanity has a grand total of 4 knives to their name that they have to share. Archaeology about this world is therefore not as interesting as it could be and a wasted opportunity. On top of that, the gritty survival focus of the series' story loses its basis because if magic is real, what is to say that we couldn't just find a spell that solves all these problems like hunger and the need for shelter? My solution is that either there shouldn't have been magic at all to begin with, or go all in on that and don't even bother with the gritty survival parts or archaeology and just find magic bullets with which to kill velociraptors and hippogriffs. I also have to return to another game mechanical thing about these games that lack any sense. The way you get guns. Already the second game drew a lot of criticism about the fact that Lara would only get a revolver after already killing almost a dozen human enemies with, guns on them, and would only get the assault rifle from the hands of a random enemy in a cutscene even though she's killed countless people who had rifles already. This game feels that it is just not enough. Not only does this game make that same mistake, this makes the same mistake twice. In that later on in the story a thing happens that causes you to temporarily lose all of your guns except for one of the world's 4 knives, of course, and then you get to have a stealth section of multiple small areas against enemies that have assault rifles, and after killing those enemies, Lara doesn't take their guns. But later on, she again takes a rifle from some dude with no explanation to why the other 30 rifles before just weren't to her liking. This is another baffling example of the game refusing to improve on the issues of the series, and in this case even resolving to make those issues even worse by pulling this stuff twice. I realize that harping on how the obstacles or the gaining of weapons makes no sense in the world context might sound like small things, but at least I'm a player who wants to believe in the world I'm playing in. To feel that the world makes some sense, and that in turn gives the events in said world more dramatic and emotional weight, because I'm more immersed in the proceedings. And these issues constantly come up and stare at you in the face during the game. Beyond all these issues I mentioned, the game was a bit of a technical mess in that I had the game freeze on me multiple times upon me picking up a collectible relic, and the mud puddles that seem to be there to hide loading screens in between 2 areas become pretty annoying after a while. But those are indeed things that tell me that the game needed more time to be, ironed out and, to have things therefore work out more smoothly. But I hope that this video has been helpful with understanding why I feel that Shadow of the Tomb Raider is woefully disappointing. I hope you've enjoyed watching it though, and if you have any thoughts or opinions, feel free to leave a comment below and maybe drop a like or even subscribe or share if you want to. And I hope to see you again next time.